Okay, so here we are. This is October the 13th, Friday the 13th, 2023. I want to talk about tomorrow's eclipse. So yeah, we're at a Friday the 13th here, and little history tidbit. People have this superstition about Friday the 13th and it's bad luck and all that kind of thing. Well, why is this? Most people don't know. So October, Friday the 13th of October, 1307, in the Kingdom of France, the realm of France, many of the Knights Templar were arrested by royal authorities. So this is Friday, October the 13th, 1307. The Knights Templar, we usually think of them as kind of a private army. They were actually a private army owned by a giant private bank. The biggest bank in Europe, and actually the first modern bank. So they just basically answered to a bank. So they had all kinds of different authorities in debt. They were lending money to the Vatican, to the King of France. Eventually the King of France got very deep in debt. He wanted to join the order. He wanted to become a Templar, much like the King of Portugal had. They wouldn't let him in. I think they thought he was kind of a rotten, spoiled little shit in his own right. So they didn't let him in, and he had massive debt to them. So he just decided that he was going to crush them. So another thing he did was he abducted one pope and put a pope of his choosing on the throne. So the king who did this was it Philip the Fourth, Philip the Fair, Capetian dynasty. So anyway, he puts a pope on the throne who will back his arrest of the Templars. And he arrested many of the Templars. They arrested some, but then there are accounts that, the Templars moved freely in France after that. So they didn't really get rid of them. I think they arrested the ones that, the key leaders that were available. Now, I say available because the Templars had spies everywhere. They knew these arrests were coming, so they let some of their leaders, like Jacques de Molay, the head of the Templars in France, I think he was the Grand Master for the whole order too. They let some people hang out to dry, but all their ships had left France with most of their wealth and with most of their relics, their sacred relics that they had recovered in the Middle East. So, in Jerusalem. So, yeah, it was the day of the arrest all over France. So prior to that date, sealed orders were sent out. And these orders said, do not open until sunrise, Friday the 13th of October, 1307. So they did this. They arrested the Templars. Templars basically had to go underground, or they had to go to different countries and then change the name of their order because the Pope outlawed their order, this puppet Pope that the King of France had installed. So that's the deal with Friday the 13th. And so to this day, many secret societies are either the direct descendants of Templars, the Knights Templar, the Order of the Temple, or they're sort of the spiritual descendants who have taken up their legacy on their own volition. So it's a mixed bag with the secret societies. So that's why people say Friday the 13th is unlucky. Now, there was a purpose. I went through that whole tangent. Today was declared by the Hamas leader. I can't remember that bottom feeder's name. But he declared it, a day of international jihad, and he called on Muslims all over the world to martyr themselves. For him, apparently. So, an abusive political and religious leader, what else is new? So, it's like more of the same. This is what Christianity was doing back in medieval times, after the fall of the Roman Empire. So when I go off on religion, I'm not telling anyone to just abandon their faith overnight, but you need to know the origins of things so that history doesn't repeat. And when people know certain truths, we'll call them, over generations, it becomes part of the generational memory, and people don't relive history, or at least they have not so much of a tendency to relive history. So I think Islam in many ways is extremely perverted. It's repressive against women. They allow for marriages to take place between, grown men and 11-year-old girls. Sometimes they're just 24-hour marriages, so these guys can have these ways with these girls. They do genital mutilation on, little girls' sexual organs, which has actually become a mainstream sort of a progressive fad here in the Western world. That's interesting. But they're perverted in so many ways. Women don't have rights. You can't, a lot of Muslim women, you can't shake their hand, for example, because it's against their rule book, their storybook, their Quran, their Bible. So, women are second-class citizens in that culture, and I don't care what anyone says. It's not a religion of peace. It's like the Old Testament, where they tell people to go out, kill the unbelievers. Here are the rules for managing your slaves and keeping your slaves. It's a pretty perverted religion. But Christianity was like this, just really up until, midway through the 1700s, really. So these religions of the rule book, of the storybook, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, they became dominant religions in the Western world and the Middle East because they killed a lot of people. And they tried to bury the cultures and the spiritual traditions that came before them. And they were not fully successful, thank the gods. So we need to know the origins of these things so we don't repeat history. And like I said, I'm not telling anyone to abandon their faith. You just need to be honest with yourself and know the origins. And especially here in America, especially like here in the Bible Belt after the Civil War, in the 1860s, this like English-speaking Protestant world basically started telling themselves that the world and history was like a G-rated Christian movie. So, and as Americans and as Westerners, especially the English-speaking Protestant world, we have this tendency to not want to speak about or even think about anything that makes us uncomfortable. And it's not doing good things for us. So we need to know the origins of things. And when I call, the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, whatever, when I call it a storybook, I'm not disparaging it. I'm not speaking negatively about it, but it's about putting things in the context. Now, those three religions, they say that they worship the true God, they have the true way, all other religions are inferior to them. Well, those religions are newcomers. They're like 2,000 years old at most. Even Judaism as we know it is not very old either. So you go to a place like India, China, Japan, places that have been inhabited for a long time, places that never had crusades and witch trials and all that kind of stuff, that didn't stamp out the old cultures to spread the good news, so aggressively. You go to these old places, Hinduism comes from the Vedic religion, that's at least 4,000 years old. It's more like something more like 6,000 years at least. Iran, they have Zoroastrianism that is 4,000 years old. And then places like China, you have Taoism. Japan, you've got Shinto, which predates Buddhism. If you go to those people as a Christian, a Muslim, or a Jew, and you tell people, "Oh, my religion is the true faith, and I worship the true God, and this book is the true rule book," and they're going to say, how old is your religion? Well, I mean, they know about it at this point, but they'd say, how old is your religion? Oh, it's about 2,000 years. Or in the case of Islam, oh, it's about, what is that, 1,400 years? They're going to kind of look at you like a child and kind of pat you on the head and be like, oh, that's nice. And they're going to say to their buddy, oh, look at that. He or she worships the true God and the true religion, and they read the true rule book and the true storybook. To people from older cultures, these religions are just, they're kind of passing things. They're just another religion. Now, they may be sacred to you, but to people from outside your cultural framework and your cultural lens, it's just another religion. Religions have come and gone for thousands of years, and we probably don't remember most of them. So it's like, why is yours special? Now, it's interesting with these older cultures, they know the power of myth. They don't need their holy books, they don't need their sacred scriptures to be literally true because they know the power of myth. In Western culture, we say, oh, such and such is a myth. The word myth has become synonymous with bullshit, with lies, with untruth. That's not true. Myths are stories that are truer than the truth because they're universal. It doesn't matter if they actually happen. And people from these older cultures, and even the, pagans and, European pagans, what survives of sort of the Druidic tradition, from the Gaelic lands, they'll tell you, it's like, well, it doesn't matter if any of these stories are true. They're probably not true. What matters is your ability to relate to them and your ability to draw lessons from them and to use the themes to become a better person. That's what matters. So, when it's like Christians with Jesus, it's like the mythological Jesus is much more powerful than any real one. Because any real person, you can examine their life and find all these ways that they offended people and possibly fucked up. And, it's like, if you looked hard enough, be like, oh yeah, when Jesus was 14, he touched this girl's boob and she slapped him. And then when he was 22, he grabbed someone's ass and this girl slapped him. And then another time he got drunk and wandered into someone's house. You could say same thing about Muhammad or Moses or whatever. So the point is the myths are more powerful because they're above, human fallibility. They're above just what humans do in the course of their lives and the mistakes they make. So with this whole Israel-Hamas thing going on right now, basically these people are fighting over interpretations of their sacred storybook. So I'm not saying their holy sacred scriptures are garbage, but it's just another sacred scripture in a world full of them, and it's nothing to kill people about. So, and again, especially Islam and Christianity and even Judaism in its early days, they killed a shitload of people in order to become the dominant religions. So, they'll tell you, it's like, oh, well, we spread the good news because it's so good. Well, there's more to the story. It's like they converted people at the, point of a spear, pain of death. And they made the pre-existing spiritual traditions illegal at pain of death. So we're going to talk about some runes in this video today. In Germany and Scandinavia and parts of Scotland, where these Germanic peoples live, even France, northern Italy. These symbols became illegal, and the Christians would actually kill you for using them, displaying them, and interpreting them. So, know the origins of things. It's extremely important. So, anyway, we got this eclipse tomorrow. So it's solar eclipse. By the way, I'm doing sidereal visible sky astrology here. Tropical astrology mainstream is a perfectly valid zodiac, but it tells you more about the appearance of things. And I really don't give a shit about what things look like. I want to look at them more deeply. So I'm doing sidereal. So that's what you got if you tuned into this. All right. So we got a solar eclipse. 26 degrees Virgo. Now it's interesting. Sun and moon conjunct because solar eclipses are new moons. They're conjunct at 26 Virgo. But then the node of the moon, the shadow of the moon, which in this case is K2, it's at 0 Libra, and it's conjunct the fixed star Spica. So there's a whole mouthful there. So it's an interesting eclipse because the sun and the moon, and then the node of the moon that's casting the shadow, they're in different signs, different houses. So that's pretty interesting. So let's look at this. So 26 degrees Virgo. Virgo deals with health, disease, medicines, poisons, healthcare, the public health institution, the healthcare institution, deals with public service, deals with battles and struggles and the battles you fight for the sake of others. So, and in solar eclipses, it's a new moon. It's the darkness in which something begins. It's like the darkness like a womb in which conception and a life begins. So we have a beginning here, and it's going to be a 6-month cycle until the next solar eclipse. So it's like the birth of a struggle. You can look at it as the birth of new health. A lot of different ways to look at this. And then again, K2, which is the node of the moon, which these nodes of the moon, Rahu and K2, are portals. As a portal, K2 takes things away, whereas Rahu brings new things in. So K2 is like an exit door, Rahu's an entry door. K2 is a liberator, wants to liberate us from the material world and the perceptions within it. So K2 does that. K2's I already said this. K2's a liberator. K2 tells the truth. There's no greater truth teller than K2, and K2 just wants to just break down all the illusions and just basically help you pull your head out of your ass and show you what's real. Now, the interesting thing is that the fixed star Spica, it's at 29 Virgo, so 1 degree away from this K2. Spica is like the look at me star. So it's like a star of like celebrity. It's fame due to creative talent. So there's that. It's star of media, fame, entertainment, and also like delusions and like material illusions. It's thinking that there's nothing beyond the material world. So, and it's also a star of premonition. So it's like with this eclipse, you've got K2 wanting to just show us our own superficiality. And then the lunar mansion that this is all happening in. It's happening in a lunar mansion called Vulcan. Part of Vulcan is in Virgo, part is in Libra. So to me, K2 is like opening this portal and wanting to help us just get over our own superficiality and our own vanity. So that's pretty interesting. And then, what was it? October the 3rd. So a couple weeks, 11 days, week and a half before, Mars and K2 met at 0 Libra. So it's like Mars laid a minefield for this eclipse. Mars rules this lunar mansion, Vulcan. And, Vulcan deals with overcoming superficiality. Vulcan was the smith god in Roman and Greek mythology. And, he wasn't attractive himself, but he made very beautiful things out of metal. He made the gods magical weapons. He was a stonemason. He built things for the gods. And he was a god himself, and he was the god of smithing and of craftsmanship. And he was always building beautiful things to try to win the affections of Venus or Aphrodite, the goddess of love, the most beautiful being in the cosmos. So, strong superficiality and vanity. So K2 wants to help us relieve ourselves of that. So that's pretty interesting. So this is the beginning. And Virgo too, you can look at it as cleansing. So this is like the beginning of a cleansing. It goes on at least for 6 months, and we're probably going to feel it for years because the world's due for a big house cleaning. So, and like I said, Vulcan is ruled by Mars. This lunar mansion Vulcan, which partly in Virgo, partly in Libra, is ruled by Mars. Mars is still in Vulcan. So, because both K2 and the sun and moon are here during this eclipse, they're under the influence of Mars. So there can be a lot of just like insanity. Things feel out of control. There can be violence, just like abrupt changes. Mars and K2 together can be very destructive. Mars and K2 are conjunct on days like 9/11. So there's all that going on. Now, an interesting thing here. Mercury is down at 23 degrees Virgo, also conjunct this solar eclipse, this new moon. So because Mercury is at the lowest degree, Mercury is actually controlling this eclipse. Mercury is in its home sign and its strongest sign, Virgo. Mercury is the intellect. Mercury is the rational, logical thinking mind. So this is an opportunity for us to basically wrap our heads around the cleansing the earth and we ourselves have to go through. So we're looking at this portal, and this portal is an opportunity to just dump baggage out of our world and out of our lives, and to cleanse things. One of the things that needs to be cleansed, getting back to the whole religion thing and the whole Israel Hamas thing, we need to cleanse this idea that we should fight over, religion and spirituality and this spiritual mythology that we call scripture. This is a deep karmic thing running through the world that, non-believers need to be either turned into second-class citizens or, outright killed. So, and then, people fighting over land because of a storybook. It's like, it's literally insane. So we need to dump this karma. K2 wants to help us do that. In K2, you can think of K2 as like a spiritual practitioner who is just like an ascetic monk who has no property, shaves their head, there's like no vanity, no property, just wants the truth, and is not caught up in, a whole bunch of like ritual and churches and temples. They like live out in the wilderness and they just want a simple life. So that's the energy of that. So another interesting thing I want to inject into this. So my thumbnail, you see some highlighted states in the United States. So it's the states on the Mexican border. It's Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada was highlighted. What? Utah, maybe Colorado, Oregon. I think like southern Idaho. That's where, so it's the southwest of the United States. The point is, the southwest of the United States is where this eclipse is most visible at its maximum. So this is going to raise some issues, over border security in the United States, I can guarantee you. So we've been delusional about, especially, the political left and, the whole Western world is delusional about how many migrants that don't speak the native language, don't have job skills, about how many of these people that they can let in. And we've just had this open border, which is actually very dangerous from a security standpoint. So that's one of the delusions we have to cleanse, and like just the whole supporting the whole open border thing. And it's like, just bring anyone and everyone into this country. That was a huge virtue signal. Virtue signaling, it's vanity. It falls under Vulcan, which is a superficial constellation in lunar mansion, and under the star Spica, because when people virtue signal, they want to be like mini celebrities in their social circles and in their families. So that's one of the delusions we have to clean out here. And it's like, I don't care who's offended by that, because money's not infinite. And if you just keep fucking hammering rich people with taxes, they just leave. They just leave your country. They go where money is treated better. So that's something we have to contend with here. Okay. Now another layer. We got Uranus in the mix. Uranus is in conjunct. Solar eclipse again, Sun and Moon, 26 Virgo. You've got Uranus at 28 Aries. So so you have an in conjunct, so 150-degree aspect within 2 degrees, so pretty damn close. You got an in conjunction, or quincunx as they call it. In conjunctions, quincunxes, it's all about when planets don't communicate well, when signs don't communicate well. So Uranus is a disruptor. Uranus is an earth shaker, turns the status quo on its head. Uranus is all about interruptions that catalyze evolution. You know, Uranus can also deal with like technology and electricity, which were things that disrupted the flow of human life when they were new. Anything new and disruptive is Uranus. Uranus is retrograde. So it's going backward, it's looking backward, it's doing a review. It's in Aries, it's reviewing what goes on in our heads. Aries is the head, and also leadership, what our leadership has been doing. So another way to put this, Aries being the leadership, Aries, Uranus and Aries, is not in good communication with this eclipse in Virgo. So there's this cleansing that has to take place, Virgo, of our superficiality and our vanity. But the leadership is like not on board with that at all. And they're like, oh, I'm going to look so fabulous. I'm going to take a trip to the border and do all kinds of staged photos with refugees, and I'm going to look so kind. Well, it's blowing up in their faces. And a lot of leaders are looking like assholes right now, you know, like supporting terrorist attacks and saying they have to continue until there's justice in Palestine. So it's a bunch of, you're going to see more ridiculousness out of them. They're not going to be on board. They're going to go kicking and screaming into the future where they're less and less relevant. So now this Uranus retrograde in Aries, which is looking at this eclipse causing like confusion and miscommunication, it's in a constellation, a lunar mansion called Vesta. And I mentioned this in the October video. Vesta, goddess of the sacrificial flame. So you say sacrifice, you know, ritual sacrifice. People are like, oh, baby blood drinking. And it's like, no. What this usually was in the ancient world was you actually burn some of your foods so the smell would travel to the heavens, to the gods. And the gods are just our higher dimensional selves. You know, you're not separate from God. God's not separate from you. Your soul can never be separate from God. That's a bunch of religious, emotional blackmail created to beat down people's self-esteem and get people to do whatever the church or the religion says, whatever the cult says. They're all cults. Cult's not necessarily a bad word. So yeah, it was people would burn a portion of their food. So Vesta was the goddess of this flame. So she was like a middleman who got a portion of all of this. So it's like, you know, if you're really paying attention, it looks like the leaders of the Western world are like sacrificing the Western world to their agendas so they can have this, you know, globalist kumbaya fest. They want to destroy all the cultures, languages, genders, borders, tribes. They want to destroy all that stuff. They're ready to sacrifice it. So, you know, we all know how awesome they are. So, yeah, so there's this tendency to want to like make these sacrifices so they can get their way. Now, the thing with sacrifices, it's been a way ritualistically to manifest things in this world, in the 3D world. You appeal to spiritual powers to manifest things in this world. So they're trying to do that. Most people, you know, a lot of truthers think that the authorities, the politicians in this world are like master occultists and master magicians. They don't know shit about that anymore. they bring people in to explain that stuff to them, but when it comes to their membership in secret societies, they're a bunch of posers and they don't know anything. It's like if they're master Illuminati fucking magicians, why do they have impeachment hearings and arraignments for Donald Trump during Mercury retrogrades constantly? It's because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. So that this whole thing that like all the politicians and all the corporate leaders in the world are like these master Illuminati wizards and magicians. It's just a bunch of truther porn because they want to get all excited about, oh, we're up against such a mighty magical enemy. And it's like, no, get over yourself. That's fucking narcissism. So they don't know shit about any of this stuff anymore, but they dabble in it. So, and I think that's a place their minds go. It's like, well, we could sacrifice something to get our way. So I think that dynamic of disruption is being transferred from Uranus in Vesta over to this eclipse. So that's pretty interesting. But remember, Saturn is conjunct America's natal moon, America's birth moon. Saturn's in retrograde, and Saturn's going, hold your fucking horses. Saturn's in Aquarius, which is America's third house of media. Aquarius is a sign of we the people. So Saturn is really keeping a lid on all this deep state, internationalist, globalist craziness, which we did not have in our favor during World War II or the Great Depression or any of that stuff. So we're in a very fortunate position here. Now, yeah, and going back to Vesta with the sacrifices, it's interesting. This Vesta energy, it needs an external catalyst. It's sort of it's of a yin nature. So even though Vesta's ruled by the sun, it's very yin, where it's like it's kind of passive. It can't get itself going. It needs an activation energy. It needs a catalyst. And that was the thing. These sacrificial flames would empower the goddess Vesta. These sacrificial flames. So you can tell that, the globalist elite, wherever you want to call them, they're looking for a catalyst to get their own agenda back on track, which is failing horribly. Despite what any of the truthers were making money off of your YouTube views and, you using their store code, when you buy fucking prepping survival supplies, none of them, want to tell you, how screwed they are. Well, some of them will, but they get off and they profit from your fear. So remember that. Now, last thing about Vesta. Vesta has her attribute. So like the object associated with her, it's a kettle because she was a goddess of the hearth fire in the home. And that's where people used to cook food. So there's this kettle where stews are brewed, where things are cooked up. So first thing that comes to my mind when I think of this kettle, I think of the needlecraft, the sacred anointing of the needlecraft, which was the remedy for the Rona, which if it worked, why would you need more than one? Riddle me. So I think about whatever was cooked up in that little vial in the lab, is that vial being akin to that kettle. So that's pretty interesting with that. That's something interesting to think about. But what I think with that kettle, especially dealing with the sign Virgo of medicines, poisons, health, disease, I think this winter, we're going to see the side effects of the needlecraft really start getting to people. Especially with K2. K2 is on the 28th of November is going to transit from Libra back to Virgo. So it's going to go from Libra, the sign of value of the marketplace, back to Virgo, the sign of medicine, health, disease. So that's going to be interesting. And, Mars and K2 having met, on the doorstep of Virgo, because the nodes Rahu and Ketu go backwards, so that zero when it comes to the movement of Rahu and Ketu, 0 degrees Libra, that's the doorway to Virgo, because Rahu and Ketu move backwards. So right at that doorway, in Ketu again, significator of release, of liberation, of a feeling of liberation, or your soul's liberation from this world, meets with Mars, which can be a destructor, very intense destructor right before it goes into Virgo. That could mean that the health situation this winter in the northern hemisphere, this cold and flu season, could get pretty dicey. They might try to drum up, all this hype and hysteria about, disease X or whatever the hell they call it. They might say the Rona's back. We need to, do lockdowns again and all that shit, but it's side effects. It's all side effects. So that's my opinion. So, don't fall for it. A lot of people won't. People who fell for it initially, I think, are like, oh my God, like, what the fuck are we doing the last 3 years? And, between attempts at the return Rona lockdowns, and then this whole border security debacle, when you go back to Vulcan, the lunar mansion where this happens, Vulcan was depicted riding a donkey. So there's an American political party. Symbol is a donkey. This is a Democratic Party. So that's interesting. Could, they're looking worse by the day. I don't like the Republicans either. They're complete assholes too. But it's interesting you got the donkey involved in this. So, but they seem to be eating their words more and more every day. And if there's a terrorist attack in the U.S. because of this global jihad day, they're going to be eating their words over the border, especially when it comes out that the assholes who at least allegedly pulled it off came across the border. It's going to be like, oh, nice open border policy, assholes. So, yeah. And then another layer to this, you've got Pluto stationed in America's second house, just like 3 degrees away from the birth Pluto. So America's going through a Pluto return. It's in the second house of wealth, sign of Capricorn, and sidereal government. So we're about to go through a whole financial restructuring, and that's gonna get interesting. So that's the general deal with that. Let's look at some runes. We're already pushing 40 minutes, but I wanted to roll this in because I don't want to edit a video upload. So where the hell are my runes? Yeah, shit. One sec. All right. I'm going to do this on the fly, a little sloppier than I wanted to, but I got my little baggie of runes here. So, I pulled some runes. I did an October, like a month of October rune video. Check that out. That was an interesting reading. That's actually one of the more intense rune spreads I've ever pulled. It's all about, we've gotten so far away from common sense, from our spiritual gifts and our true spiritual heritage. And we're about to go through involuntary transformation. The one for the eclipse and what that means for us, a lot more positive. So I did a 9-world rune spread, and this is 9 runes. You lay out the 8 points of the compass, and then you put one in the middle. So this is for the 9 worlds. And if you've seen the Thor movies, Thor talks about the 9 worlds. Well, the symbol that depicts the 9 worlds, it's the Chinese Bagua, it's the Aegis Yalmer, the Thunder Wheel in Germanic tradition. In the Vedic tradition in India, they call it the Ashtanga yantra. So at least everywhere in Eurasia has this, if not beyond. It's like I've never seen. There's got to be examples of it in Africa. I've never seen them. And in the Americas, they had something similar. I'm sure the Aborigines have something like it in Australia. But anyway, yeah. The so that's how you lay this out. The 8 points of the compass, which symbolizes the 8 other dimensions in this reality. And then the one in the middle is Midgard, Middle Earth, where we live. So I'm going to show you these runes. I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way here. Here we go. The middle rune, highly positive, highly auspicious. That's the Manaj rune. So Manaj, that is the, it looks, it basically, you've got like almost an hourglass or an angular infinity symbol, and it's got these 2 little legs on it. So Manaj, this has to deal with the divine mind. So the word man or man, it meant human that embodies the divine mind. So man was not an adult male. It was a genderless word. It was a human embodying divine mind in human form. It was the moon. The moon is a reflector, just like the mind is. The mind reflects the soul. When you have enough energy and you can get to a more higher, more objective perspective, your mind reflects your soul. So that's what the mind's supposed to do. So this deals with this is a rune of the divine mind. This is the meditative, objective mind, where people can't push your buttons so easily. So this says that, humanity, we're actually embracing, this eclipse is about embracing this. Not everybody will take this opportunity, but this is the opportunity with this eclipse. So that's pretty awesome. So that middle rune, that Midgard rune in the middle of the compass, that is our conscious experience of, the question or the issue at hand. And I asked about what's the meaning and the opportunity of this solar eclipse. Okay, so then moving on, we go to the north. God, I should have laid these out. Should have laid these out ahead of time. Not a dead time as I go searching for these. Okay, the north, the mist home, the home of the waters of life. The mist home, this is where energy comes from the void. It's what scientists think of as the God particle. It's this energy out of the void that is undifferentiated, hasn't been turned into anything. Pure potential. This is pure potential, can become anything. And then in a rune reading, it's also about what's coming. This is the Ingvaj rune. So it's 2 X's and you've got a diamond in the middle. Diamonds, in a lot of symbolism, deal with the Kundalini force. Now, this rune deals with incubation. So there's something incubating in that diamond. The Kundalini is incubating in that diamond. So the Kundalini force, that is like the force of our spiritual maturity, our emotional maturity. So it's about growth. So growth is coming. This eclipse is about seizing an opportunity to grow rather than just doing things the way we've always been doing it. So it's basically saying, don't expect immediate changes from this eclipse. There'll be disruptions. There could be some violence in the world, I hate that to be the case, but when we are confronted with spiritual transformation, we usually don't go willingly, and chaos breaks out in order to catalyze it. So this one in the north is saying, just wait. Wait for the changes. Keep developing yourself. Keep doing your inner work on yourself. Okay. Now we got to go to the northeast, home of the celestial gods. So this is the super consciousness. These celestial gods. They're not, creepy, scary fallen angels that are going to eat your soul or something. They're higher dimensional versions of you. You are like the 3D branch. You are one of the 3D branch offices for these consciousnesses. So the northeast, home of the celestial gods, it's intuition, it's aspirations, goals, it's things you want, things you aspire to. and an intuitive guidance. We've got the soul rune here. So Saul. It looks like this. It's like an S. It's like a lightning bolt. The Nazis stole this symbol, for their, the symbolism of their cult, but this is not an evil symbol. This is a symbol of the soul. This is actually the inner feminine power of the sun, because the inside of the sun is a fusion reactor. So this is a rune of the sun, of the inner soul. So, and this is about embracing your soul, following your soul. So this is what we have the opportunity to aspire to through this eclipse. So we can take the opportunity to follow the divine guidance of our souls, and like your soul is, everybody's soul is God. So, it's like this thing we call God branches down. It has intermediaries. It's like if you work for a big company like ExxonMobil, you have a supervisor. The CEO of Exxon doesn't tell you what to do every day. And I think that's a thing with like monotheist, the one God religion. It's ruled by a micromanager. And it's like, well, the boss always has intermediaries. So it's the way I think of it. Okay, we got to move on here. It's a long one. Where the hell is it? The one you can find is never, here it is. Okay, in the east, got Diage. The east, that's the Jotunheim, the giant home. The giants are forces of nature. They're the expansive forces of nature. It's like if let's say you died out in the woods, right? The forest would like digest your body, it would eat your body. Nature's like a stomach and it consumes things. And as humans, we're more delicate than the wildlife. We need houses, we need heat. So we found these ways to keep the forces of nature at bay in a limited way. And Thor is the archetype for the energy that helps us to create these spaces we can live in where we're not completely at the mercy of nature. We're always at the mercy of it, but we can mitigate its harshness, especially if we don't know how to be self-sufficient. So Jotunheim in the east. This is the home of the forces of nature. It's force of expansion. This is also the ego. So this is yourself, how you relate to yourself. This is how you see yourself in a situation when you're doing a reading. So this one, Diage. Diage, it looks like, it's like an hourglass on its side. It's like an infinity symbol, but it's angular. Diage means day. This is like the light of the sun. The sun being the soul, being the divine spiritual light. So, and this is a very spiritual rune. So this is the identity that we have the opportunity to seize upon and to embrace if we do the inner work. Nobody's going to save you. I think that's a total misinterpretation of religion, was somebody's going to save you. It's like with Christianity, it's like, if you really read the Bible, it's like Jesus gave you the tools to save yourself. He never said he was going to come save you. That's like a total bastardization. So, and Jesus is the soul. Very symbolic way of talking about the soul. Because again, myths are more powerful than flesh and blood people. So we can grasp and seize this opportunity to make our identity just this light of the soul. And Diage deals with like the joy, whatever brings you joy in life. So it's like we can grasp that and make that our identity. And that's really our rightful identity as humans. Our identity is what brings us joy, what brings our souls joy. That's what we're supposed to gear our lives towards, not the squirreling acorns away, So resources come to you when you have joy. You might not be a brilliant, investor and stock gambler like someone in your family, but you do things that make you happy, resources do come to you, and that's a big part of our evolution. Okay, so southeast, move on to the southeast. This is the dwarf home. This is a realm of magic, a realm of intention, a realm of the subconscious. The subconscious is the link between the conscious and the unconscious selves. So it's the intent of the conscious mind can use the power of the unconscious. That's the subconscious. And the unconscious, that's your built-in manifester. So the subconscious, see, it has the ability to tell your unconscious what it wants it to create. Because the unconscious creates your circumstances, brings you resources, brings your health, your relationships, creates your world. So the southeast is about magic and manifestation. So the dwarf home, the dwarves are the bottom of the evolutionary ladder. So you have dwarves, which are actually emotions. They're emotional bodies. They're your instincts. Then dwarves evolve to become human souls. Human souls evolve to become elves or perfected immortals who graduate from the reincarnation cycle. They graduate from Earth School and they become teaching assistants. And the teaching assistants, they're basically our higher selves that teach our souls. So the southeast is this dwarf home. So this is our instincts and our emotions that help us to manifest. So I got the Issa rune. So Issa, this is a rune of psychological and emotional boundaries. And so boundaries are all about knowing about where your business ends and other people's business begins. There's a severe lack of this in our world. Politics, all about lack of boundaries. Unsolicited advice. Religions do a good job of that too, just giving unsolicited advice. So this is saying in the subconscious, we really want to bring our boundaries back. Our borders are an example of boundaries, group boundaries. So got to have the boundaries. All right, move on to the south. Where is that one? Okay. South is a realm of action. This is the fire home. So south and north are opposites. North is potential, south is action. So fire home. This is also a realm of like death and rebirth. So we have the Ansuj. Ansuj is it's a word for mouth, and this is also the rune of the celestial gods. The super consciousness, the higher consciousness. So, and this is about. It also deals with like the magical power of speech. So this means having this in a realm of action. It means we're taking action to actually listen to our higher consciousness, to listen to our higher dimensional selves, and to speak the truth, to use our words constructively. So that's a big positive. We go on to the southwest. Southwest is Helheim, the hell home. Hell is not a place of torment or torture. It is the underworld. In the Germanic traditions, it's the underworld. It's where souls go between physical incarnations to basically dump their baggage and heal. So this is the unconscious. So the unconscious, it's an overwhelming amount of information. It's all of your memories from this life. It's all of your memories from past lives. And we have a collective unconscious. So this collective unconscious, it's all the information of everything that's ever happened, everything that ever will happen. And this unconscious mind, this contains our life path, our destiny and our life path. So this part of ourselves knows exactly what we want to do, where we want to do it, who we want to do it with. So the unconscious is extremely important. You can't control it, but you can get it to help you manifest things in life. And you can understand yourself better. the more you tap into it. So the rune we got here, we got a rune in reverse. We got the first reversal for this. So upright, it looks like this. It's an angular P. It's called Wunyo. Wunyo is fun. It's joy. The ancient meaning is it deals with where the cattle can rest, where the cattle can feel at ease. Because you wanted, in the old days, especially in Europe and Northern Europe, cattle were the currency because you can make so many things out of cows' bones, their hides, their tendons. You can eat the meat, you can drink the milk. Cattle were all important. You can use the horns, the hooves, the blood. So, yeah, they're use them for fertilizer. You can use the cow shit for fertilizer. Cows are extremely important. So it's where the cattle are at ease. It's where you feel at ease and have fun. It's the joy you also have from interacting with other people. So right now in the unconscious, we're cut off from that joy. Well, that's not very surprising. The world is going fucking a little crazier than usual right now. So that's something that has to be rebalanced. We have to find that ability in the unconscious to just feel right in our own skin. All right. West. So we move on to the West. West is the Vanaheim. West is the Vanaheim, the home of the Vanir. The Vanir are the terrestrial gods. These are the gods of nature and fertility. And these gods are like the grandparents. So the celestials are like all-powerful children. The Vanir, the terrestrial gods, gods of nature and fertility. They are, they oversee these forces of nature. They oversee human relationships, your physical experience, your sensual experience of the world. And in a reading, this world in the West, this Vanaheim, this is your relationship to other people. It's how other people act within the matter at hand. So we got another reversed rune in this reading. So we got the Kenaj rune, the torch rune. This is what it looks like upright. This is the reversal. Yeah, it's the reversal. So the torch rune, this is the ability to look into the dark places in the world, look into the dark places inside yourself, and discover new things. This is a rune of the god Loki. Another word for Loki is Lucifer. Lucifer's not some evil devil that wants to eat your soul. Lucifer, Loki, it's all about a flash of lightning, a flash of brilliance, the aha moments in life. So basically this means we're not seeing things through other people's perspectives as a collective. And well, shit, in Israel, you got two religions fighting over a storybook and whose interpretation of the storybook is most correct. So we need to see things through other people's perspective. We need to see our relationships with other people more deeply so they can be harmonious. Okay, and last one, we come to the Northwest, the elf home. So again, the elves, the guardian angels, the higher selves, the humans who graduated from reincarnation cycle. So this is the realm of the higher selves. This is the highest spiritual consciousness. So we had another reversal here. So we had Uruj. That's upright, but reversed, it looks like this. But upright, Uruj, this is basically the horns of a bison pointing downward. It's like when a cow or a buffalo or a bison charges. So this Uruj, the word comes from the aurochs. The aurochs is the ancestor to modern cows. It was a giant bison that originated in at least the Ice Age. This thing was like 7 foot tall at its withers, so at its shoulders. Extremely dangerous to hunt, very aggressive, very powerful. This is a rune of strength, of raw primal power, and even the power of like the fundamental duality, in nature. There's a lot of gray in life, but there are dualities that we deal with. Kind of like your chromosomes. You might have two X's, you might have an X and a Y. Some people have genetic disorders where they have like two Y's or two X's. They have three chromosomes. They'll have like XYY, XXY. It's extremely rare. So, for example, most of us are either XX chromosomes, those are female chromosomes, and an XY that makes you a male. There are rare cases. And there are genuine dysmorphias too. But, we shouldn't be pressuring 5-year-olds that they need to make a gender change. So, anyway, rune of raw primal power reversed. This is strength. So having this in the Northwest, in the home of the elves, this is basically telling us we don't have the strength of our full spiritual power behind us. We need to rebalance that and get that back. So that is, it's pretty serious. That is not one you want blocked because you want that guidance, from your higher self, from the elves, from the ancestors, as they call them, in traditions all over the world. So, yeah, we have, to sum this all up, we have the opportunity to embrace the meditative mind, to live through it, to incubate, to foster our own growth, our own spiritual and emotional growth, to follow the divine guidance from our souls, to identify with what gives us joy, to have proper psychological and emotional boundaries. We have the power to act on intuitive divine guidance and to speak what that genuine intuitive divine guidance tells us. But we've got some blockages. We're not focused on, the joy of interaction with other people and harmonious relationships. And we're not seeing things through other people's point of view, and we don't have the full force of our spirituality behind us. So to rebalance all this, what you could do, I would say, if I had to pick a rune that helps rebalance all this, I would probably use the wait a minute. Make sure I'm doing this right. No, I'm misspeaking. I would use that Ansuj rune because, actually, I take that back. Switched it up on you. Wait a minute. I'm being indecisive. I would use Kenaj, even though it popped up as a reversal. I would still use it. It will reverse. It will rebalance, that Uruj that showed up in the elf home. So what you could do, face northeast. You can chant this rune. You can just chant Uruj. You can do it audibly, silently. Or there's another way, the most powerful way I know. Break it into 2 syllables. You say the first syllable on your inhale. So so you would say the on the inhale and then the rouge on the exhale. Do this silently. And on the inhale and the exhale, don't only pass your breath through your mouth, but also through your nose. That helps basically stimulate, your pineal. Different way of doing it. I don't think, screaming and shouting help with, meditations and rituals and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that's the gist of that. Happy eclipse. It'll be interesting. Talk to you later.